The market of Despaired auction hall buzzed with the sound of credits changing hands and lives being sold like cargo. Station Omega 7 hosted the largest slave market in the Outer Rim, where beings from across the galaxy were reduced to numbers. In prices, air reeked of desperation and cleaning chemicals that couldn't quite mask the smell of fear. Zara stood on the cold metal platform, her silver skin catching the harsh overhead lights. Her people, the Etherians, were prized for their beauty and intelligence, which only made her situation more valuable and more hopeless. The translucent fabric they'd wrapped around her did nothing to preserve her dignity, and she kept her luminous blue eyes fixed on a point beyond the crowd, refusing to let them see her break. The auctioneer's voice droned on, listing her measurements and supposed qualities like she was livestock. Lot 47, female Etherian, age 23 standard years, 68 kilos. No previous ownership records. Mitting started slow. A restaurant owner from the inner colonies raised his hand first, followed by no. A mining corporation representative. Zara's stomach twisted as she watched their faces, calculating her worth in labor or worse. She'd heard the stories about what happened to Etherian women in certain establishments. Then a new voice cut through the chatter, deep and commanding. 5,000 credits. The crowd turned to see who had made such a substantial opening bid. A human male stood near the back, broad-shouldered and weathered, wearing a worn leather jacket over practical clothes. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and his brown eyes were steady, unreadable. Captain Marcus Webb, according to the whispers that rippled through the audience. The auctioneer's eyes lit up at the unexpected bidding war that was about to begin. But Marcus stepped forward, his boots echoing on the metal floor. 10,000. Final offer. Murmurs of surprise filled the hall. That was nearly double what most Etherians sold for, more than many buyers could afford or justify. The restaurant owner shook his head and sat down. The mining rep hesitated, then also withdrew. Going once, the auctioneer called, scanning the crowd for any last-minute bids. Going twice, his gavel struck the podium with finality. Sold to Captain Webb for 10,000 credits. Zara's legs nearly gave out. She'd been bought by a human, a species she knew little about, except that they were relatively new to Galactic civilization and had a reputation for being unpredictable. Fear coursed through her as guards moved to escort her from the platform. Marcus approached, pulling off his jacket as he walked. Without a word, he draped it around her shoulders, the leather still warm from his body heat. The gesture was so unexpected that Zara flinched, waiting for the catch, the demand for gratitude, the leash that would surely follow. Instead, he looked directly into her eyes and spoke in a voice that was firm but not harsh. "You're safe now. I'm taking you home." The words made no sense. Home wasn't a place that existed for people like her anymore. Slaves didn't have homes, only owners and assignments. Yet something in his tone, in the way he didn't grab her arm or snap orders, made her want to believe him. As they walked through the station's corridors, other traders and buyers stared. Some called out to Marcus, making crude jokes about his purchase or offering to buy her from him at a profit. His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond to their taunts. Instead, he stayed close enough to shield her from their leering looks without crowding her. They reached his ship, a mid-sized cargo hauler that had seen better days but appeared well-maintained. The hull was scarred from asteroid impacts and plasma burns, telling stories of dangerous runs through hostile space. As the airlock cycled open, Zara hesitated at the threshold. Marcus noticed her reluctance and stopped. "You can board whenever you're ready. No one's forcing you." The choice, however small, meant everything. Zara pulled his jacket tighter around herself and stepped aboard, crossing into an uncertain future that somehow felt less frightening than the past she was leaving behind. The unexpected Journith ship's interior was cramped but clean, with worn surfaces that spoke of years of honest use rather than neglect. Marcus led Zara through narrow corridors lined with supply lockers and maintenance panels, the steady hum of the engines creating a oddly comforting background noise. "Nova, we have a passenger," Marcus said to the air as they walked. A pleasant female voice responded from hidden speakers. "Welcome aboard, Miss Nova, the ship's artificial intelligence. Shall I prepare guest quarters?" Zara jumped at the unexpected voice, then felt foolish for her reaction. Of course, a ship this size would have an AI system. Still, the courtesy of being addressed as Miss rather than cargo or property caught her off guard. Guest quarters 7 should be ready, Marcus told the AI, then turned to Zara. You'll have privacy, and the door locks from the inside. Nova won't monitor you unless there's an emergency. They stopped outside a small but comfortable-looking room. Inside, Zara could see a proper bed with clean sheets, a small desk, and even a viewport showing the star field outside. It was more consideration than she'd received in months. Why? The question escaped before she could stop herself. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, studying her face. Because everyone deserves basic dignity, regardless of how they ended up here. That's not what I meant. Zara clutched his jacket, using it as armor against vulnerability. Why spend 10,000 credits on someone you don't know? Why risk your reputation buying from slavers? For a moment, his carefully controlled expression cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Because I know what it's like to be in chains. The admission hung in the air between them. Zara searched his face for deception, but found only hard-earned truth. Scars on his wrists, barely visible beneath his sleeves, told their own story. Federation prisoner of war camp, he continued quietly. 3 years. They used us for labor, entertainment, whatever amused them that day. When I finally escaped, I swore I'd never let anyone else suffer like that if I could prevent it. Understanding dawned. This wasn't charity or pity. This was one survivor recognizing another. Nova set course for Haven Colony, Marcus ordered, pushing away from the doorframe. Best possible speed. Course laden, Captain. Estimated travel time. 4 days, 18 hours. As the ship lifted off from Station Omega 7, Zara felt the artificial gravity adjust and watched through her viewport as the slave market fell away below them. For the first time in months, she wasn't being transported to a worse fate. Over the next day, an attentive routine developed. Marcus brought her meals without being asked, always knocking first and waiting for permission to enter. He showed her how to use the ship's systems, gave her access to the entertainment library, never once made her feel like a burden or an obligation. The ship's galley became neutral ground, where they shared simple meals. Marcus was surprisingly good cook, able to turn standard rations into something approaching real food. During these quiet moments, Zara began to observe him more carefully. He moved like someone who'd seen combat, always aware of his surroundings. But he was gentle when handling delicate equipment or serving food. When he thought she wasn't looking, she caught him flexing his hands, working out stiffness from old injuries. He was older than she'd first thought, probably in his early 40s. With the kind of weathered face that came from years in space. You've done this before, she said during their second evening together. Watching him portion out synthesized vegetables with practiced efficiency, rescued people. He glanced up from his work. When I can, not often enough. Them, the others you've helped, depends on what they want. Some join free colonies like Haven. Others prefer to disappear into the outer territories. A few have asked to stay and work on the ship. He slid a plate across to her. It's always their choice. The food was warm and well-seasoned. Another small kindness that reminded her she was being treated as a person rather than property. As they ate in comfortable silence, Zara found herself stealing glances at Marcus's hands, noting their steadiness, their careful movements. When he caught her looking, she felt heat rise in her cheeks and quickly focused on her meal, but she didn't miss the brief smile that touched his lips before he returned to his own food. Later, she prepared for sleep in her private quarters. Zara realized that for the first time since her capture, she felt something other than fear or despair. It was too fragile to call hope, too new to trust completely. But it was there nonetheless, growing stronger with each passing hour. Walls Come Down third day brought their first stop at Waystation Tango, a neutral trading post built into a hollowed-out asteroid. Marcus needed to refuel and pick up supplies, but he seemed reluctant to leave the ship. I can stay aboard if you prefer, Zara offered, understanding his concern. Waystation had a reputation for looking the other way when it came to questionable cargo. No. Marcus shook his head firmly. Shouldn't have to hide, just stay close. The station's main concourse was a maze of shops, bars, and merchant stalls, catering to traders, smugglers, and anyone else who preferred to conduct business away from imperial oversight. As they walked through the crowded spaces, Zara noticed how other traders reacted to Marcus. Some nodded respectfully, others deliberately looked away, and a few watched with obvious suspicion. "Webb," a gruff voice called out. They turned to see a heavy-set man approaching, his uniform marking him as station security. "Heard you were making waves at Omega-7 again." "Just conducting business, Torres," Marcus replied evenly. Torres looked Zara up and down with barely concealed disgust. "That your business? Pretty expensive for someone who's just going to run off at the first opportunity." Zara tensed, but Marcus stepped slightly forward, his posture shifting subtly into something more dangerous. "Careful, Torres.
Ow.
Your prejudices are showing." The security chief's hand drifted toward his weapon, but then he seemed to remember where he was and who he was talking to. Marcus had a reputation on Way Station, and it wasn't one to be trifled with lightly. "Just keep your liberation projects away from my station," Torres muttered, backing down. "Some of us have paying customers to consider." After he left, Zara found her hands shaking slightly. The casual threat, the way Torres had looked at her like she was still property to be claimed, brought back too many bad memories. "Breathe," Marcus said quietly, his hand hovering near her shoulder, but not quite touching. "You're safe. He's all bluster." They found a quiet corner in a small cafe, and Marcus ordered 2 cups of real coffee, a luxury that costs more than most people made in a day. The rich aroma helped calm Zara's nerves as she wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "How do you stand it?" she asked. "The way they look at you, talk to you?" "Reputation," Marcus said simply. "Word gets around that you don't mess with people under my protection. Eventually, most of them learn to keep their opinions to themselves. And the ones who don't?" His smile was sharp-edged. "Let's just say I learned more than prisoner maintenance during my time in that camp." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the flow of traffic through the cafe's windows. Zara found herself studying Marcus's profile, noting the small scar that ran along his jaw, the way his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging potential threats and exits. "What was your life like?" he asked suddenly. "Before." The question caught her off guard. Most people either didn't care about her past or assumed it was too painful to discuss. But there was genuine curiosity in his voice, not morbid fascination. "Was a cultural liaison," she said slowly. "My people value harmony, peaceful contact with other species. I specialized in first contact protocols." The irony wasn't lost on her. "I was actually on my way to establish relations with a new colony. When our ship was attacked, pirates, slavers, the word tasted bitter.
Ass.
They knew exactly what they were looking for. Someone with linguistic training, cultural knowledge. I fetched a good price at the initial auction before Mugatu-7. Marcus's jaw tightened. "How long? 6 months? 3 different owners?" She didn't elaborate on what those 6 months had entailed, but she saw understanding in his eyes. Without thinking, he reached across the small table and covered her hand with his. The contact was warm, careful, asking rather than demanding. "That's over now." The simple declaration, backed by absolute certainty, made something tight in her chest finally begin to loosen. She turned her hand palm up, letting their fingers intertwine briefly before pulling back. "What about you?" Asked, "What was your life like before the war?" "Simpler," he smiled ruefully. "I was just a cargo pilot, running supplies between the inner colonies. Had a small ship, regular routes, steady customers. Thought the biggest risk I'd face was asteroid fields or engine failures." "What changed your mind about getting involved?" "In conflicts, when they took my ship and crew, they didn't just take our freedom, they took our hope. Made us believe we were worthless, that no one cared enough to look for us." His voice grew quiet. "I can't give people back their innocence, but I can remind them they're worth saving." As they prepared to leave the cafe, Zara impulsively reached for his hand again. This time, she held on a little longer, letting him know that his efforts weren't wasted, that she was beginning to remember her own worth. Hearts Callidian, their final day, before reaching Haven Colony. The ship's proximity alarms shrieked to life. Marcus rushed to the bridge with Zara close behind, where Nova's holographic display showed 3 vessels closing fast from behind. Slavers. Marcus identified grimly, recognizing the ship configurations. They must have tracked us from Omega-7. Double quotes. The lead ship hailed them with a crackling transmission. Cargo vessel, heave 2 for inspection. You're carrying stolen property? Property? Zara's voice was sharp with anger and fear. Marcus was already moving, hands flying over the navigation controls. Nova, evasive maneuvers, best speed to the nearest Imperial patrol route. Implementing evasive pattern alpha, the AI responded. As the ship lurched sideways, plasma bolts streaked past the viewport, close enough that their energy signatures interfered with the ship's systems. Marcus fought to keep them on course while Zara gripped the edge of the console, watching their pursuers gain ground. They're faster than us, she observed with forced calm, but not smarter. Marcus's fingers danced across the weapons console. Nova, remember those modifications we made to the cargo bay doors? Ah, yes. The surprise we installed for pirates. Shall I prepare the deployment? On my mark. The slaver ships moved into formation, trying to box them in. Marcus waited until they were perfectly positioned, then triggered the modified doors. Instead of opening to space, they expelled a cloud of reflective chaff and sensor scramblers, creating a temporary electromagnetic storm that blinded their pursuers' targeting systems. In the confusion, Marcus killed their engines and let momentum carry them into the shadow of a nearby asteroid. The slavers shot past, their sensors confused by the chaff cloud, and for a moment they were safe. But the respite was brief. One of the pursuing ships had better equipment and quickly recalibrated their sensors. Plasma fire raked their hull, sending sparks flying from damaged systems. Hull breach in Section 4, Nova reported with artificial calm. Life support holding, but I'm reading system failures throughout the ship. Marcus pushed himself away from the smoking console, but as he stood, a piece of twisted metal caught him across the ribs. He stumbled, hand pressed to his side where blood was already seeping through his shirt. Marcus. Zara was at his side immediately, her hands pressing over his to help stop the bleeding. I'm fine, he said through gritted teeth, but she could. See the pain in his eyes? You're not fine. Sit down before you fall down. The intimacy of the moment caught them both by surprise. Her hands were gentle but firm as she examined the wound, her luminous eyes wide with concern. Marcus found himself studying her face, noting the determined set of her jaw, the way her silver skin seemed to glow with inner light when she was focused. Zara, he said quietly. She looked up and suddenly they were very close, her hands still. Pressed against his ribs, his breath warm on her cheek. The danger surrounding them faded for a moment as something more immediate and equally frightening took its place. The kiss was inevitable, born from adrenaline and shared fear in the sudden realization that they might not survive the next few hours. Her lips were soft against his, tasting of coffee and courage, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Don't you dare die on me, she whispered fiercely. Wouldn't dream of it, he managed, then winced as Nova's voice interrupted. Captain, the slavers have located us again. 2 minutes until weapons range. Marcus struggled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his side. Can you reach the medical kit in the emergency locker? Zara retrieved the kit and quickly applied a pressure bandage to his wound while he worked the controls one-handed. His piloting was still precise, despite the injury. Threading their damaged ship through the asteroid field with desperate skill. There. He pointed at the scanner. Imperial patrol ship, bearing 27 Mark 4. They limped toward the patrol vessel, broadcasting emergency codes on all frequencies. The slavers, seeing the Imperial insignia, broke off their pursuit with frustrated curses transmitted on open channels as they docked with the patrol ship for emergency repairs. Zara helped Marcus to the medical bay. The Imperial medic was efficient, but cold. treating the wound with professional detachment while asking pointed questions about how they'd sustained battle damage. Pirate attack, Marcus explained smoothly. Happened so fast we barely got away. Medic didn't look convinced, but couldn't prove otherwise. As he worked, Zara stayed close to Marcus, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The gesture was protective, possessive even, and the medic noticed. "Your wife?" he asked. Marcus started to correct him, but Zara spoke first. "Yes," she said firmly, her voice carrying just enough Etherean authority to discourage further questions. Later, as they waited for repairs to be completed, they sat together in the ship's small recreation area. Marcus's side ached, despite the pain medication, but having Zara pressed against his uninjured side made everything more bearable. "Wife?" he asked with gentle amusement. She blushed, her silver skin taking on a rose-gold hue. It seemed simpler than explaining the truth. And what is the truth? She looked up at him, her luminous eyes serious. That you risked everything. To save someone you barely know, that you're the first person in months to treat me like I matter. That I'm falling for a human and I don't know what that means. Marcus cupped her face gently, thumb tracing along her cheekbone. It means we figure it out together. Home among the star-shaven colony appeared on their screens like a promise fulfilled, a collection of interconnected habitats orbiting a peaceful blue-green world. The colony had been established by freed slaves, political refugees, and others. Seeking a fresh start, far from imperial control, "Incoming vessel, please state your business," came the hail from colony control. "This is Captain Webb, requesting permission to dock. I have a passenger seeking sanctuary." There was a pause. Then, a warmer voice responded. "Marcus, it's been too long, my friend. Bay 7 is opening for you now." The docking bay was bustling with activity as ships of various sizes came and went. Marcus and Zara were met by a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of hard work and honest labor. "Dr. Elena Vasquez," she introduced. Herself to Zara, "Help coordinate resettlement services for new arrivals." "Zara," she replied, then glanced at Marcus. "Zara Webb." The name felt right on her lips, though she wasn't sure when she'd decided to claim it. Marcus's surprised but pleased expression told her he felt the same way. Dr. Vasquez led them through the colony's main thoroughfare, pointing out various facilities. There were workshops where refugees learned new trades, schools where children of dozens of species learned together, and community gardens where former enemies worked side by side to grow food for everyone. "We have several Etherean families here, Doctor," Vasquez explained. "They'd be happy to help you adjust, share cultural connections you might be missing." Zara nodded politely, but her attention kept drifting to Marcus. His wound was healing well, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing at the exit routes. This wasn't his world, comfortable as he might be here. They were offered a small apartment in the residential sector, clean and well-appointed with a view of the gardens. As Dr. Vasquez left them to settle in, the weight of decision pressed down on both of them. "It's perfect," Zara said, standing at the window and watching children play in the courtyard below. "Safe, peaceful, surrounded by people who understand." "Yes," Marcus agreed, but something in his tone made her turn around. He was standing by the door, not quite inside the room, as if he hadn't decided whether to stay or go. The sight of him poised for departure made her chest tighten with unexpected. "Panic, you're leaving," she said. "Not quite a question. The ship needs repairs. There are other people who need help. The galaxy's a big place, and I'm safe now, so your job is done." The words came out sharper than she intended, hurt bleeding through despite her attempts to stay rational. Marcus stepped closer, reaching for her hands. "That's not what this is about." "Then what?" She pulled away, pacing to the other side of the small room. "What is it about, Marcus?" Because for a moment there, I thought she stopped, embarrassed by her own assumptions. "You thought what? That we were building something together? That what happened between us meant something more than just convenience or gratitude or—" He crossed the room in 3 quick strides, catching her face in his hands and kissing her with desperate intensity. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "It means everything," he said fiercely. "But I don't know how to have a normal life, Zara." I don't know how to stay in one place. How to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. Someone like me." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Marcus, 6 months ago, I was property. I was broken, used, discarded. You gave me back my humanity, my choice, my name. You think there's someone better than you out there for me? You could have a real home here. Stability, community, a future that doesn't involve dodging slavers and pirates." She moved closer, placing her hands flat against his chest, feeling his heart beat through the fabric of his shirt. "What if I don't want that future without you in it?" The admission hung between them, vulnerable and brave. Marcus covered her hands with his, holding them against his heart. "The ship's not much of a home," he warned. "Cramped quarters, dangerous. Work. Never knowing what's around the next star. Sounds like an adventure." She smiled up at him, and he saw the woman she'd been before slavery tried to break her, strong and curious and ready to face the unknown. "Besides, you'll need a cultural liaison if you're going to keep liberating people from all over the galaxy." "Is that what you want? Really?" Instead of answering with words, she kissed him again, pouring all her hope and determination and newfound courage into the contact. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I want to go home," she said softly. "Haven Colony, no?" She shook her head. "Home is wherever you are, Marcus Webb. The ship, the stars, the unknown. That's where I belong." 3 days later, they stood on the bridge of their repaired ship, watching Haven Colony fall away behind them. Nova had been upgraded with some new defensive systems, and their cargo hold carried supplies for another distant outpost that served as a way station for refugees. "Next stop, Kepler Station," Marcus announced, settling into the pilot's seat. Zara took her place at the communications console, officially the ship's new cultural liaison and communications officer. She wore a simple flight suit now instead of borrowed clothes, and a thin silver band circled her finger, matching the one on Marcus's hand. They'd exchanged them in a simple ceremony witnessed by Dr. Vasquez and Nova's cameras. The Kepler Station. "Control, this is the free ship Nova requesting permission to dock." She spoke into the comm system. "We have medical supplies and transport services available." As they waited for a response, Marcus reached over and took her hand, intertwining their fingers. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, two survivors who had found something worth fighting for in each other. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities and people who needed help finding their way home. And for the first time in either of their lives, home wasn't a place on a map, but a choice they made every day to stand together against the darkness. "Welcome to the adventure," Marcus said softly. Zara squeezed his hand and